have to think about communication in a different way, because communication, yes, is our words. Semantics are powerful. Semantics are a part of it. Choosing the right words, choosing how to say them is amazing. But communication is energetic. Communication is how we show up. It's how we present ourselves. It's how we feel in our body when we are communicating and how we make others feel. Right now you're feeling cold, and I feel you because my toes stopped feeling a while ago. And I am moving around, and I'm going to be sweaty by the end of this, so I am sorry. And so there are two things that I have found to be essential if you want to be a relatable communicator. You have to be present, and you have to be adaptable. And we're going to start with present because it's the toughest one in this day and age. The fact is that there is no deeper desire for a human being than to feel important. We want to be seen, and we want to be heard. And I admit, I talk about this, and I'm not always that good at it. So I was actually, during COVID, spent an enormous amount of time, as most of us did, with our families. And there's a reason why I travel for a living. So I'm with my daughter, who's now 11, so she's 10 at the time, and we're sitting on the couch, and we're watching something she's seen a million times. It's Incredibles 2. She knows the words to everything, and she's over there. She's got her hand in the popcorn, and she is laughing and engaged and just loving every second of it. And you know what I'm doing? Well, one, I have my hand in the popcorn because I never miss out on good food. So I still got the popcorn going, but my other hand is on my phone. It's on my phone, and I'm shopping for things on Amazon that I do not need. And definitely don't need in 2 days. Also, don't get anything delivered while you're traveling if you live with your partner. It's a bad idea. There's some resentment building. We're going to work through that. But so I was shopping. And she looks at me, and she's got these like enormous saucer brown eyes. And she looks at me and she goes, "Mom, can you just put the phone down and watch the movie with me?" I get it. I'm like not an emotional person, but man, it like gets me. It gets me because she's right. She's right. I wasn't being present. You know how that makes people feel? Have you ever been in a conversation where you know someone's just not there? How does it make you feel? Shout it out. Terrible. Terrible. It's terrible. It makes you feel like you're not worthy of conversation. It makes you feel like you are not important. And if we want to relate to people, if we want to make people feel like they're seen and heard, we have to start with our presence. My friend just sent out an invitation for her party, and she said, "Your presence is far more important than any presence you can bring." And I was like, that's a lie. But I'll be there. We have to start to think about how we show up. We have to start to think about how we make people feel if we're going to truly make connections that matter at work, at home, in love. There was a man who was really good at this, and that was Mr. Rogers. Now, remember I just told you about that group of 18-year-olds put Mr. Rogers on stage, on screen, and just a bunch of blank stares on that one too, and I was like, this is what's wrong with America. Right here. The fact that they don't know who Mr. Rogers is problematic. And I was like, but didn't you at least see the documentary? That was like 2 years ago. You were probably like 12? No, didn't watch that either. So Tom Hanks played Mr. Rogers. Anybody see that documentary? How cool was that? So I grew up with Mr. Rogers. I thought he was just the most amazing human being because he made people feel important that weren't on set with him. You were a child watching that, and you knew that you were important. And so it was 1985, 86, and Mr. Rogers is at the height of his career, height of his popularity, but also so was someone else, Oprah, although she's still at the height of her popularity, so she's like a plateau in a good way, not like a diet one. So Oprah calls Mr. Rogers and says, "Hey, we'd love to have you on the show." And it's probably not Oprah, it was probably a producer. And Mr. Rogers says, "Absolutely, I would love to, under one condition. There cannot be any children in the audience." And they were like, "Oh, that's kind of your jam. I don't know why. Like, you don't like kids all of a sudden? That's kind of weird." And they just said, "No, I don't want any families in the audience, but I'd love to talk to you about what I do and my intention, my purpose in this world." And so they book them. And TV does what it does best, which is completely ignore the wishes of the people on camera. Anybody ever work in TV here? I met someone at the bar that did, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's kindred spirits. We're like getting through the war. So he goes to the set, and he sits on stage, and he looks out, and it's all families. Families everywhere. And so he's in a conversation, probably in chairs just like this, talking to Oprah, and this little girl breaks free from her mom, runs down to stage, and asks him for a hug. And do you know what he did? He stopped everything. Stopped everything, stopped talking to Oprah, and got up, kneeled down, and gave that little girl a hug. And then a little boy decided, I need to make sure the train that you constructed up on Oprah's set is fully functioning. He was a little afraid. He was like, could go off the rails at any moment, kind of like me. And so he comes down, and Mr. Rogers stops everything again and connects with that little boy and makes sure that he doesn't feel scared anymore about what's going on that stage. He knew exactly who was important to him. He knew exactly who he needed to make a priority. And he followed that down through everything. And the moral of this story is that if Mr. Rogers can ignore Oprah, I can ignore my phone. If Mr. Rogers can ignore Oprah, we can stop with the distractions and allow the people in front of us to feel as important as those little children did, and to feel as safe. Our presence really comes down to three things, and it's eye contact. Eye contact means that I am invested, I am in. I am here for you, and I am actually invested in what you have to say and who you are. And I know it's hard, and I'm not gonna make you do one of those weird staring exercises, I promise. I have done that before on television. They're still angry at me. It's really awkward, uncomfortable, but it does work. Eye contact is real. It really does start to make a connection. And how many here have had those conversations, right, where someone's not looking at you and you're like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? And so if eye contact is a challenge, which it often is for people, you can baby step into that. The second is curious listening, which I think is active listening squared. Active listening is cool. It means I am actually paying attention to you. But we have to get curious about one another. We have to get curious because curiosity is where that importance of feeling comes from, where that person that's being asked questions in not like an interrogation kind of way, but they're in front of someone who's actually curious about who they are, what they do, what they love, who they love, all of the things in life that matter to them, it hits differently. So when we think about curious listening, we think, what is that next level of listening I can engage in? How can I get more curious about the people around me, about my teams, about my colleagues, about my friends, my loved ones? Because studies show, and I am a research nerd, that the more that someone talks in a conversation, the highest they rate it. And so that means if you can just get a little curious, you can hack the system. All of a sudden, everybody that you're talking to is going to feel better about you and about the situation because they felt important. And lastly is eliminating those distractions. I get it, we don't have phones anymore. We have little computers, right? That's not a phone. My mom has a phone. It still flips. She's not gonna change. We have little computers in our hands that notify us every time something happens. Every time something happens, something else pops up, whether it's a news story, a text message, a flight check-in, something completely irrelevant. They're constantly distracting us. And when we allow that distraction to interfere with our presence, we are not communicating. So we have to eliminate those distractions in a way that makes you think of Mr. Rogers and pay attention to what's important and what's in front of you.